5 years of betrayal exposed at one family dinner. My name is Daniel Carter, and for the last 5 years, I've measured my life in shifts and receipts. Mornings, I unload trucks at a warehouse. Afternoons, I fix thermostats and office chairs for a property manager. And nights, I deliver food until the city goes quiet. I live in a studio above a nail salon, wear the bust size of my window like an old dog. On my phone, there's a breathing spreadsheet with 4 tabs: gas, food, rent, surprise. Surprise wins most months, like it has a personal grudge. I keep a toolbox in my trunk and a pair of work boots that remember every ladder I ever climbed. My sister is Ava Carter, 27, fluent in affirmations and natural light. Mom says she's building a brand, which looks a lot like unboxing videos and pastel blazers. When Ava is late on a bill, it's timing from the universe. When I'm late, it's because I'm too stubborn to ask for help. Grandpa is Richard Cole, the kind of man whose watch could buy a car and whose boots could tell you how he did it. He started with one hardware store and built a little web of storage lots and rentals brick by brick. Holidays at his house are a lesson in paradox. Crystal glasses next to paper plates, linen napkins around casseroles from a church cookbook. He likes a long table, too much butter on the green beans, and enough chairs to make people talk to strangers they share a last name with. On Friday night, the family gathered the way weather gathers, inevitable and bigger than anyone. I was still scrubbing the warehouse from under my fingernails when I rang the bell. Grandpa opened the door with a hug that could reset your spine. "Hope you're enjoying your $7,000 allowance, kiddo," he said, loud enough to clink every fork in the room. My brain tripped over the number and fell down the stairs. "What allowance?" I asked, smiling because it was either that or drop the casserole I couldn't afford to make. He chuckled like I'd forgotten a birthday. "The stipend, $7,000 a month. Started in 2019 for you and Ava." "A runway," he said, like weather again. The room swam, then narrowed to the center of the table. I had 3 jobs and a spreadsheet that breathed like a scared animal. Mom slid a tray into the oven and gave me a look that meant don't start. Ava touched Grandpa's sleeve and said softly, "You know how Daniel is. He doesn't like accepting help." "I love accepting help," I said, hearing my voice surprise even me. "I just haven't met it." Grandpa's eyebrows moved together like double doors. "You mean you didn't get it?" I pulled out my phone because I had been preparing for a month to have this conversation I hoped I wouldn't need. After chasing down old logins, I'd finally gotten into the Cole Family Foundation portal the week before. I scrolled the disbursements and turned the screen to him. Each monthly line item said recipient, D. Carter, and each one ended up routed to a masked account I knew by heart. The last 4 digits matched the number I'd Zelled 50 times over the years. They were Ava's. Grandpa reads slowly because he respects ink. He set the phone down like it was hot metal. A fork slipped somewhere down the table and made the kind of ting that brands a night into memory. No one breathed for a few beats, and then everyone did at once. Mom reached for the phone, but I kept my hand on it. Ava said the word household like we all lived behind one routing number. The coordinator said it would be easier to have a single landing spot, she added, voice smooth as a brochure. Everything stayed in the family. "What household?" I asked, feeling my jaw set in place for the first time all week. Because the last time I checked, my apartment was above a nail salon and my roommate was the bus schedule. Grandpa looked at me, not through me. "When did you find out, Dan?" 30 seconds ago, I said, then corrected myself because honesty is a muscle I've overtrained. "A month ago, I suspected. Today I got the statements." The TV flashed a baseball game on mute, as if pictures could erase paper. My cousin's kid asked, "What's an allowance?" and got shushed like she'd sworn. I put 2 green beans on my plate because my body was still following the script. They tasted like paper wearing a butter costume. At 9:14 p.m., my phone buzzed with a number carrying the bank's area code. For a second, I considered letting it ring out, not wanting to pour more gasoline on the evening. "Mr. Carter? This is Nora with Franklin Trust. We're calling to confirm an outgoing wire request and a beneficiary change on your family account. It's marked urgent. Are you authorizing?" The room went very still for a gathering with 12 chairs. I asked, "Name on the destination?" Ava Social, LLC, she said, crisp as a ledger. Across the table, Ava was pretending to carve a dessert that didn't need carving. I could feel the bus outside sigh right on cue. No, I said, steadying the air between my hands. Freeze anything tied to my SSN pending an in-house fraud review. I ended the call and found Grandpa's eyes. He had the expression of a man who'd cut a board wrong and knew the measurement was his. Library, he said, and chairs began to scrape. The library is where he keeps the books that taught him the difference between a problem and a project. Leather chairs, a fireplace that's decorative 9 months a year, and the smell of old paper. Mom crossed her arms like a door you can't open from the outside. Ava drifted to the window with her phone. Volume turned up so every buzz landed like a small applause break. I stood because sitting made my words feel shorter. Grandpa held the printouts I'd brought as backup. He read slowly, line by line, each month a small betrayal wearing a nice suit. This says every distribution to you was routed to an account ending in 4187 since March 2019, he said. Administrative simplification. Mom offered, like she was testifying in a friendly courtroom. We used a household account. Everything was shared, she added. I wasn't, I said. Ava jumped in like the conversation had been waiting for her cue. I kept receipts, she said. Startup costs, travel to conferences, equipment. It wasn't like I bought shoes. I remember a bag she posted that could have covered my rent for a month. I didn't say it because the night already had enough sentences it would never digest. Grandpa looked at me again. Why didn't you say something sooner? Because 1,000 small reasons sound ridiculous when you speak them out loud. Because I didn't want to be labeled greedy in a house where generosity lives on a sliding scale. Because survival has a noise, and it's hard to hear your own sense of fairness over 3 jobs and a bus stop. I didn't know, I said. Not really. Not until I did. He nodded once, the way a judge does when a thing has already been decided. He put his phone on speaker and redialed Franklin Trust. We need to cancel any beneficiary changes and reverse any unauthorized wires. Effective now, he said. Nora's voice was all business. Holds placed, confirmations required, coordinator permissions to be verified. Mom tried a softer tone that used to work on scraped knees. Richard, don't be theatrical. This is family. This is money, he said, not unkind. And money makes most families worse. Ava's smile cracked just enough to show the scaffolding. You're going to humiliate me over a misunderstanding, she said, and the room didn't know where to look. You've been undermining your brother in installments for 5 years, Grandpa answered, never raising his voice. Mom made one more pass at the old script. Daniel never asks for help. He's stubborn. I thought of every late night. I said, I'm fine, because it felt safer than opening a door I couldn't close. I thought of the spreadsheet that always breathed too fast. I'm not asking, I said, calm surprising the room again. I'm setting a boundary. Ava rolled her eyes like she'd spotted a self-help quote on clearance. Oh my gosh, therapy words. Grown-up words. Here are simple ones, I said. No more using my name. No more touching my money. No more routing. No more household if I don't live in it. Grandpa nodded like a metronome, finding the right tempo. He turned the page and underlined with his finger. Ava, you'll repay every monthly amount diverted from Daniel's share. You'll send him a written accounting of what you spent. We'll decide what, if anything, counts as a family expense. Spoiler, it doesn't. He looked at Mom. You're removed as coordinator, effective immediately. Color left her face the way daylight leaves a room with one switch. You don't mean that, she said. I do, he answered. You forgot what the money was for. And what was it for? Mom asked, like the answer might save the night. Runway. Not spectacle, he said. I breathed for what felt like the first time since the front door. The baseball game in the other room unmuted itself in my head and then vanished again. The bus sighed outside like it knew its role. Do you want the monthly still? Grandpa asked me quietly. Or the principal distribution? Or both paused until you decide. Pause, I said, surprised at how quickly I knew. I want to think like a person who isn't drowning. He squeezed my shoulder the way he used to when we'd fix a loose hinge together. We'll make it right, he said. Not pretty. Right. Pretty's been our problem. I said, and he almost smiled. There you are, he answered. The next 48 hours learned how to be noisy. Relatives texted like they were auditioning to narrate my life. Mom said I had made my sister look bad in front of her grandfather. Ava said I had no idea how money moves these days and that I was ruining her business. An unfamiliar number called to verify that the wire to Ava's Social, LLC, had been canceled. A cousin sent a screenshot with a LOL I didn't open. Through all of it, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb except for 3 names: my boss, Grandpa, and a group chat with warehouse guys who sent photos of cursor pallets. Even after a hot shower, the math stayed on my skin. At lunch on Monday, I met with Celine Vega, a lawyer recommended by a friend who knows what paper can do when you stack it straight. I brought call logs, emails, statements, the bank's call note, a screenshot of the LLC, and that household account memo with my name on it like a sticker on a box I never opened. Celine didn't flinch. This is simple and not, she said, turning pages like they weighed the same. Legally, unauthorized transfer, misuse of beneficiary status, breach of grantor intent, she went on. Practically, family. I don't want a courtroom, I said, because I want a life. I want a wall. We can build one, Celine said. Demand letter to repay diverted funds into your account. Independent trustee in place of your mother. Fraud alerts. Directive to the foundation. No coordinator except you and the grantor. And change your passwords everywhere. So I did the unglamorous hero work of closing gaps. I placed a credit freeze so thick it probably covered my high school yearbook. I opened a new bank and a new email, and I found subscriptions I'd been unknowingly floating for the household. I canceled a card that kept getting charged for a shopping cart I never pushed. That night, the spreadsheet on my phone breathed evenly for the first time in months. It still had all 4 tabs, but surprise didn't look so confident. Back at Grandpa's, the forensic accountant started tracing the money like a river. Every March since 2019, $7,000 left the foundation as D. Carter and arrived somewhere else as X4187. The number isn't a character I want to give more lines to, but it had learned too many scenes. In the footnotes were words like office, travel brand. Ava emailed me a 4-page PDF titled Apportionment, arguing that the family benefited from investing in her company and that I hadn't asked for rent money because I was proud. I forwarded it to Celine and made coffee strong enough to stand up and leave. Celine replied with a letter that used words I planned to frame. Misappropriation, restitution, fiduciary duty, and my new favorite, cease. It's not rude, she said. It's adult. In the middle of this, Grandpa called sounding older than he had on Friday. I should have watched it closer, he said. I thought I was helping. You were, I said, because truth has more than one face. It just got repurposed. Your mother is out as coordinator, he said, as if reassuring himself. I'm putting a professional in place. If you want monthly, it'll go straight to you. If you want the principal, we'll do it by the book. If you want neither, I won't take it personally. I want to fence first, I said. Then I want to think. Good, he said. The only time money is evil is when it's a secret. The bus sighed outside my window like it agreed. A week later, the noise didn't disappear, but turned into weather you could plan around. Ava's attempted wire didn't go through. She posted a black and white story about how some people don't like to see you win. I didn't watch the live. Mom invited us for a pot roast that tasted like the late 90s. I brought Celine on Zoom because I've learned that paper works better when it has a witness. We're requesting repayment of diverted monthly distributions into Daniel's account. 30 days, Celine said. No punitive damages. No police report. No court if you comply. You can't squeeze blood from a stone, Ava said, with a laugh that didn't want to be there. Good thing we're squeezing it for money, Celine answered, which I admit I enjoyed too much. Mom tried tears I remember from grade school. He's your sister, she said, and we all let the sentence sit there making no sense. I know, I said. That's why I'm not pressing charges. That's why I'm asking for a plan. That's why this isn't seen. It's a line. Nothing was signed that night, but the air felt different. 2 days later, a partial restitution hit my new account. It wasn't from Ava. It was from Grandpa, with a note. She'll repay me. You're not my bill collector. You're my grandson. I sat on my kitchen floor in a towel, and let my jaw find its original hinge. Work got easier not because I quit a job, but because I stopped carrying a fourth one called shame. On paper, I still had 3 jobs, but the balance changed. When I turned down an extra shift, my manager didn't fire me. I bought new boots and retired the ones that knew too much. Late-night texts kept coming, storms kept happening, group chats kept being group chats. But my mind had a locker with a door now, and it said mine. 5 weeks after the dinner, a professional trustee was officially in place. Emails arrived with my name on them and my consent attached. The monthly stipend didn't start up automatically because I asked Grandpa to pause it while I remembered what it felt like not to tread water. If and when it resumed, it would walk a straight line into an account that only answered to me. Ava and I texted when we needed to coordinate with Mom about the holidays. If she flared with, "You made me look bad," I let float past like a coupon. Mom sent me reels about forgiveness and sunsets from the porch. I liked them with a small heart and left the locks where they belong. On my kitchen cabinet, I taped 5 lines with blue painter's tape. I don't send money I can't afford. Family isn't a license to use my name. I don't explain math to people who prefer magic. Money questions go in writing. Locks aren't rude, they're boundaries. Every morning while I cook eggs, I read them out loud. It feels a little silly and completely necessary. A week later, Grandpa stopped by with a bag of bolts, and that look he gets when the world needs a wrench more than a speech. Between us, we fixed 1 wobbly table and 3 chairs that forgot how to be furniture. "I wanted you to have options, not obligations," he said, tapping the table twice like he always does after a job well done. "I want that too," I told him, and I meant every word. "Good," he said. "If you want a moral, it's boring and it works. Don't pay for the story where you're both the villain and the sponsor. Don't call a pipeline a misunderstanding. Don't let a banner that says family cover a drawer full of receipts. Build a fence. Keep a door. Use both." I added, and he smiled. "I still live above the nail salon. The bus still sighs. But at 9:14 p.m., if the bank calls, my finger knows which button to press. And if family calls, the call turns into an email. The allowance isn't me, and the sponsor isn't me. I'm the person who decides what I'll fund with my cash, time, and peace." And that night, the night the fork fell, I finally chose me. It wasn't revenge. It was closure beginning to breathe. I thought the storm had already passed after that dinner, but I was wrong. The silence that followed the confrontation at Grandpa Edward's table wasn't resolution. It was only the eye of the hurricane. Marissa stopped speaking to me directly for a week. Instead, she sent group texts pretending like everything was normal, dropping cheery emojis as if emojis could erase 5 years of theft. Mom responded with the same tone, forcing fake smiles into sentences like "family first" and "we'll get through this." I didn't respond. I was too busy working double shifts, trying to decide whether to buy groceries or put more gas in my car. Even with the truth out in the open, my life hadn't changed yet. The allowance hadn't been restored. The missing funds hadn't returned, and the bills weren't going to wait for justice. One night, after delivering food until almost 1 a.m., I found a message taped to my apartment door. It was from Grandpa. He'd driven across town and left it by hand. The handwriting was shaky, but still bold. "Daniel, come by the library tomorrow. We need to finish this properly." The next afternoon, I arrived at his house. The library smelled like dust and leather. Edward sat in a heavy chair near the window, papers spread across his desk. Marissa wasn't there, which already made me breathe easier. "Sit," he said simply. I obeyed. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were statements from the trust, letters from the bank, and a summary typed neatly with bullet points. Clara, the lawyer I'd shown my evidence to, had clearly been busy. Edward's eyes, usually warm and teasing, looked heavier than I'd ever seen them. "This is bigger than a misunderstanding. This is a pattern, and it ends now." I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. For the first time in my life, Grandpa treated me not like the struggling grandson he needed to rescue, but like a partner. He explained how the allowance had been designed. He had wanted both Marissa and me to have a chance to build something without carrying the same heavy load he had once carried. But when people confuse opportunity with entitlement, he said, they ruin the purpose. I nodded, thinking of Marissa's designer bags, her trips, the endless photos of brunches she never paid for. Here's what we'll do, Edward continued. I'm appointing Clara as the new coordinator. Effective immediately. You'll both receive reports every month directly. Transparent, clean. But Marissa, he exhaled heavily. She will be required to repay what she took. My heart jumped. Repay? All of it. He met my eyes. Every cent. That night, the house filled again. This time not for a meal, but for a reckoning. Mom sat with her arms crossed tightly, glaring at Clara like she was an intruder. Marissa came late, wearing sunglasses even though it was dark outside, as if hiding from the truth behind tinted glass. Edward spoke first. Marissa, you diverted money from Daniel's allowance for 5 years. That stops today. You will repay what you took. Marissa scoffed, her voice sharp. You can't just decide that, Grandpa. It wasn't theft. It was consolidation. A family account. Clara leaned forward calmly. Marissa, legally it is theft. These documents show clear misappropriation of funds. If we wanted, we could pursue it in court. But Edward is giving you the chance to settle privately. The room felt like a courtroom. Only instead of judges and juries, it was family. I expected Marissa to fight, to shout, to call me dramatic. Instead, she laughed bitterly. So Daniel, the martyr, finally gets his spotlight. You want revenge, don't you? That's all this is. I clench my fists but force my voice steady. This isn't revenge. This is about boundaries. About fairness. You don't get to use my name, my money, and then tell me it's love. For the first time, she didn't fire back immediately. Her lips trembled before she looked away. Grandpa's voice filled the silence. Marissa, I will cover what you cannot repay immediately, but you will sign an agreement to reimburse me. Daniel is not your bill collector. He is your brother, but you must learn what responsibility means. Mom tried to interrupt, but Edward silenced her with one stern look. The next weeks were exhausting. Clara worked with the bank to freeze any unauthorized transactions. Marissa sent long, dramatic emails claiming she was being victimized. Mom called me every night, crying, saying I was tearing the family apart. But through the chaos, something began to shift inside me. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing after missing dollars or asking myself where my money had gone. I was building my own wall, just like Clara had said. I paid rent on time, bought groceries without panic, even replaced a pair of boots that had holes in the soles. And every small step felt like breathing air after years of drowning. One afternoon, Clara invited me to her office. She had a new document ready, a repayment plan signed by Marissa and notarized. She'll have to stick to this, Clara explained. If she doesn't, legal consequences follow. I read the papers 3 times, my hands shaking. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about validation. Proof that I hadn't been crazy. Proof that my exhaustion hadn't been laziness, but survival. Thank you, I whispered. Clara smiled. Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You fought for this. But the real turning point came a month later. Grandpa called us all for another dinner. I dreaded it, fearing another explosion. But instead, he surprised me. He stood, tapping his glass. Family, we've made mistakes. But tonight I want to do something different. Daniel, come here. Confused, I walked toward him. Edward placed his old, calloused hand on my shoulder. For years, you worked harder than anyone in this room, and you did it without complaint. You reminded me of myself when I was young, and I failed to see how much you carried. That ends today. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a certificate, ownership of one of his storage facilities. I froze. This is too much, I whispered. It's not enough, Edward corrected. It's a start. I want you to have something that grows with you, not just scraps from a hidden account. Something real, something yours. For the first time in years, I couldn't hold back the tears. The room was silent. Even Marissa had no words. And in that silence, I felt the foundation of my life shifting. Not because money solved everything, but because truth finally had a place at the table. I woke up one morning and realized that for the first time in years, my chest didn't feel heavy. The sunlight that crept through the blinds didn't sting me like it used to. Instead, it warmed me like maybe life had decided I deserved a softer start. For months, I had been waiting for the next battle, the next accusation, the next betrayal. But silence had finally settled. It was a silence not of avoidance, but of peace. Grandpa Edward kept his promise. A professional administrator now handled everything. Each month, I received a clear, simple statement directly to my email. No tricks, no rerotin, no sados, just numbers that belonged to me. It felt strange at first to have money that wasn't already spoken for. I had lived so long in survival mode that even seeing a balance grow made me uneasy. But slowly, I let myself breathe. I fixed the cracked window in my studio apartment. I bought a second-hand couch that didn't sag in the middle. I even replaced my boots, the ones that had carried me through warehouse shifts and rainy nights delivering food. They were small things, but they were mine. Marissa, my sister, had gone quiet after the fallout. At first, I thought silence meant she was plotting, waiting for another chance to take what wasn't hers. But then one evening, I got a message from her. Just 5 words. I think I owe you. I stared at the text for a long time. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was more than I had ever gotten from her. I didn't respond that night, or the night after. But on the 3rd day, I wrote back. You don't owe me. You owe yourself honesty. She didn't reply. Not right away. But weeks later, she showed up at Grandpa's with a box. Inside were receipts, notebooks, fragments of her so-called business. She sat down at the kitchen table, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. I thought I was building something, she whispered. But all I was building was walls between us. I didn't say anything. I let her sit in the weight of her words. For the first time, she didn't try to charm her way out, or cry, or spin a story. She just sat there, raw and real. Grandpa put his hand on her shoulder, and for once she didn't shrug it off. The months passed. My life, which had always been a patchwork of odd jobs and exhaustion, began to shift. With steady income, I was able to cut back. I quit the late-night delivery runs. I picked up more hours at the property management job, where my boss had noticed my work ethic and offered me a full-time position with benefits. It felt like stepping out of quicksand. One Saturday, I invited Grandpa over to my place. It wasn't fancy, a one-bedroom near the bus stop with peeling paint on the stairwell, but it was clean, and it was mine. I cooked this dinner, nothing extravagant, just roasted chicken and vegetables. He took a bite and smiled. Better than those green beans at my table, he joked. We laughed together, and I realized how long it had been since laughter felt natural. Later that night, Grandpa leaned back in his chair and looked at me with pride. You built this, he said. Not the money, not the allowance, your grit, your work. The money just gave you breathing room. But the man you become, that's all you. I swallowed hard, feeling something in my chest loosen. For years, I had defined myself by what I didn't have, what had been taken from me. Now, maybe I could define myself by what I was building. Marissa and I weren't suddenly best friends. Healing doesn't work like that. Trust isn't a switch you flip. But she started sending me updates, small things like how she was applying for an actual job, how she was learning to budget, how she was trying to make amends. I didn't rush to forgive her, but I didn't shut the door either. Sometimes, hope is letting the door stay cracked open. The real turning point came at Thanksgiving. For the first time, our family sat around the table without the shadow of money poisoning the air. Grandpa raised a glass, not with some big speech, but with a simple line. To truth, he said, because it always wins. Everyone clinked their glasses. Even Mom, who had fought me the hardest, managed a small smile. She had resisted every change, every boundary, but over time, even she softened. Maybe because she saw that I wasn't out to destroy the family. I was trying to save myself, and maybe in the process, all of us. As the night went on, cousins told stories, kids laughed, and for once, I didn't feel like an outsider in my own bloodline. I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were learning how to be a family again. Later, as I walked Grandpa to his car, He put a hand on my shoulder. "Daniel," he said softly, "for years I worried you'd break under all that weight. But you didn't. You bent, but you didn't break. And now you're stronger than ever." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Because he was right. I had carried more than my share, but I had finally put it down. That night, I went home and taped a new note to my kitchen cabinet. It read, "I am not defined by what was taken. I am defined by what I build." And every morning, when I make coffee, I read it out loud. Because the truth is, life will always throw storms. But now, I have walls that keep me safe, doors I choose to open, and a future I finally believe belongs to me. Not revenge, not bitterness, just closure, and the quiet, steady strength of knowing I survived and I thrived.